Hey everyone, and welcome to Miss Estruch Biology and one of the Revise With Me videos. And in this video, we are revising one of my favourite A-level topics, which is inheritance. So whether you find revision lonely, boring, you get easily distracted and procrastinate, or you just want to study along with me, this is going to be perfect. We're going to be study buddies for the next 10 to 20 minutes, going through how you would do the different stages of your revision, and I'll give you ideas of what you can do beyond this video to revise for a test on inheritance or for your final A-levels. Everything that I use for revision in this video, I'm going to link in the description below so that you can get your own copy to have a go with me and have a go later. So quick reminder, which hopefully you've heard me say this so many times before by now, but when you are revising for any test, you need to be splitting your revision into 3 key categories. Step number 1 is you have to understand the information. Step number 2, you have to be able to remember the information. And step number 3 is exam practice. So for any test, including class tests, mock exams, and your final A-level, that's how you're splitting up your revision. Understanding, remembering, and exam practice. And usually the proportion of time that you need to be spending on each of these stages is 20% of your time understanding, 40% remembering, 40% exam practice. But that does vary a bit depending where you are on the course. If you're right at the beginning, you might be spending a bit more time understanding. If you're right at the end, about to do your A-level exam in a couple of days, then most of it is going to be exam practice. But I'm going to go through how I would do the understanding, revision, and exam practice for the inheritance topic with you. Step number 1 is understanding. And there's 2 key things I'd recommend for this step. Either it's using my YouTube videos on inheritance for this topic, or it's using my notes or your own notes or your own textbook. So pick which one you want to do. In the last video, I used notes, but today I am going to enter the world of Inception and I'm going to revise in this YouTube video with you using my YouTube video. So let's have a go going through this YouTube video, and I'm going to show you the sorts of things that I would do to help me understand, but also actually it does blend in a bit to the remembering stage as well. If you just want to do pure understanding, what I'd recommend you do is watch the videos or read your notes and use it to create flashcards, use it to create mind maps, or to turn text into images. But take a look at what I did in my revision session, Understanding Inheritance, with my YouTube video. Okay, so the sorts of things then that I would do, let me just start this on mute so we don't have Miss Estruch. With the videos, watching videos is really helpful for revision, but the key thing is that you're not just sitting, watching, doing nothing, just listening to it. You need to do something active to support you with that. So while I'm watching this, what I've got to hand are my A-level notes so that I can either highlight and annotate as I go, maybe saying key marking point, that sort of thing. And also I've got a blank notebook ready so that I can maybe turn information into text or create my own flashcards. So this bit here, we've got the key definitions about to come up. One thing that I'd probably do, if I was testing I understand it, if I don't remember these at all, because the first step is actually understanding, not remembering. If you don't understand them, then yes, listen to it the whole way through. If you don't already have my notes or flashcards, then in your notes, I'd be writing down those definitions. But if you have got my notes, it literally matches up to this. You don't need to write it down. Same with my flashcards. Or what you could do is, if we just go back to this bit here, pause it, test yourself. So if you don't have my notes, but you think you do remember this information, or you want to test that you do remember it, then go through all of these and test yourself. So that's the definitions, but we've done definitions. So I'm going to skip on to, let's get to the coding.
So the coding then of all of these types of inheritance, monohybrid is where you would just pick one letter which represents the gene, and the capital will represent the dominant allele, and the lowercase represents the recessive allele.
So what I might do then at this point is, so that I'm not just being too passive, I'm going to see if I can now remember all of the different types of inheritance and write down the coding. So that's what I would then have a go at for this bit. Okay, so different types of inheritance. I'm going to start just by saying we have general, monohybrid, and then you also learn dihybrid. So this is kind of like my equivalent of a blurb for this bit of information. So can I remember all of this key information? Sex linkage. And because it's a blurt, not making notes, it doesn't have to be neat, which is lucky for me because I am rarely neat when I'm writing. Autosomal linkage, epistasis, and multiple alleles. So I think that is all of them. So what I would then do, just to double check, this is now when you can refer to the video and just check, have you got all of those? And yeah, we did. So next I'm going to test myself. Do I know how I could do different coding for these? Monohybrid is just simple. So one letter capital and lowercase. Dihybrid is when you're looking at the inheritance of two genes simultaneously. So we might look at that gene there, but also this one. Sex linkage. This is when you have to indicate the sex chromosome, and the Y chromosome doesn't have a gene on it. Autosomal linkage would look the same as dihybrid because it's referring to two genes are on the same chromosome, not the sex chromosome. Epistasis, the coding would also look the same because it's two genes, one masks the expression of another. Multiple alleles, this is just when you have more than one allele. So that means you would have to do different coding. If we think about the blood group example, which you don't need to know off by heart, but it commonly comes up. We're going to use I to represent the gene for the blood groups, and you might have allele A or allele O. And I've just realised, missed one off, codominance. Codominance, same idea, you have a base letter and then you'd have your allele on top. So this is a mixture here of testing my understanding using a YouTube video, testing my memory as well. So that's the sorts of thing you could do using my notes or using a YouTube video. Step 2 then, we are on to the remembering, and this has to be active recall, meaning you are actively testing what you can remember and what you can't remember. And there's 3 key things that I personally love for this. Number 1, you've guessed it, flashcards. I never stop talking about flashcards because I love them. Number 2, it could be blurting, which is when you write down everything you remember for a topic, and what you didn't remember, you fill in a bright coloured pen and then repeat that in a couple of days. And then number 3 is my active recall workbook. Now I'm going to go through for inheritance the 2 that I think are most useful, and that is flashcards and active recall. The reason I think flashcards are great for this topic is with exam questions on inheritance, they nearly always start with 1 or 2 short answer questions testing your knowledge of definitions. And flashcards are amazing for testing your memory of definitions. And my flashcards have all of the key definitions, key marking points, 2 exam standard, checked by an AQA examiner and OCR examiner for the OCR ones. So this is how I'd use my AQA flashcards. Okay, let's have a go then at testing ourselves with the inheritance flashcards. So I've got a selection of key terms, and with your flashcards, the key thing is, first of all, let's hide those answers, there's no cheating. Autosomal linkage. So for this one, this is the type of inheritance when you find 2 different genes on the same chromosome. So they have to be inherited together. So we've got genes located on the same chromosome. It's not the X and Y chromosome. Yeah, so we've got that one. Epistasis. So this is when one gene interacts or masks the expression of a second gene, and one gene masks or modifies the expression of another. Monohybrid. So mono means one, hybrid is when you're crossing 2 things together. So this is looking at the genetic crosses where you only have one gene involved. Phenotype. So phenotype, that is the physical characteristics. But if you did say that, that would be insufficient detail. So that one is a key one that I wanted to point out because that is actually a 2-mark question. You need to have it's the expression of the genetic constitution and its interaction with the environment. So if you didn't get that one, you need to put it into the try again pile. Homozygous, so homo means the same. So that would be when an individual has 2 of the same alleles for a particular gene. So so 2 copies of the same allele for a gene. Heterozygous is when you have 2 different alleles for the same gene. Sex linkage, so this is when you find, or the locus of the gene is on the sex chromosomes, or you could be more specific and say the X chromosomes. But I missed off this bit. Specifically, the gene is found in the non-homologous region, so that would need to go into this pile because we missed off a bit of key information. Genotype, this is the genetic constitution of the organism. Dominant allele, so this is a version of a gene that will always be expressed in the phenotype. So always expressed in the phenotype. Recessive allele, this allele is only expressed in the phenotype if you have 2 copies of that particular allele, or another way of saying it, no dominant alleles present. Codominance, that is when both alleles are equally dominant and both are expressed in the phenotype. So we've got 2 alleles, both dominant and both expressed in the phenotype. Multiple alleles, this is when you have more than 2 alleles for a particular gene. Okay, so what you would then do is you'd need to test yourself again on the 2 that you didn't get. So sex linkage was the locus for the gene is on the sex chromosomes, specifically X, but the bit that I missed off last time was the fact that it's in the non-homologous region. Phenotype, this is the expression of the genotype or the genetic constitution and its interaction with the environment. Okay, so that's just a few of the flashcards I've got for topic 7 and inheritance. If you have the whole pack, test yourself on the whole pack for your revision, just like I did there. So if you got everything on the card, it goes on a correct pile. If you missed off anything, it goes on the try again. Try it again immediately, but you can also try it again later. If you're going to do the whole pack again, what I'd suggest is changing it up. So then go this direction and see if you can, from the description, remember the key term. Then shuffle the pack so you're not just remembering the order, and do some of them forwards, some of them backwards, because then you're really testing your knowledge of the key terms and not just your memory remembering a pattern. Once you've tested your understanding and memory of the key marking points, the next stage in the remembering part I'd recommend to do is active recall workbook, because that's a step up from flashcards. And in the active recall workbook, it's a series of short answer questions to test your understanding. And I've got this for the entire theory and a practical one, and it always comes with the answers. So take a look at me revising with my active recall workbook, and you can always have a go with me as well. Right, so next let's have a go at some of the questions in my active recall workbook. I'm not going to go through the key terms because we've just done these in the flashcard. So let's move on to something else to test the different part of the topic. We're going to do some genetic crosses. So we're told that in all genetic crosses, you must include this information. And then we've got cystic fibrosis is caused by a recessive allele. So let me just go to pen. We're on that. And let's say we'll use the letter F, capital F and lowercase f to represent the 2 alleles. And the recessive allele is the one that results in cystic fibrosis, dominant doesn't. What is the probability that 2 carriers will have a daughter? So let's just pick out that key thing that we need to be aware of. A daughter with cystic fibrosis. Now, this isn't a sex-linked condition. You don't know that because it's not on the spec. But if it was a sex-linked condition, they would have to tell you. So the fact that they're saying daughter isn't implying it's sex-linked. It means that you're going to have to do a genetic cross to work out the probability of cystic fibrosis, and then 50% of that, because it's 50% probability of having a daughter versus a son. So we need to show the parents' genotypes. The parents' genotypes, they're both carriers. So I'm going to say mother and father. Then we need to show the gametes. So they can both have a dominant and a recessive. I like to do my gametes following the convention of having them in circles just to really distinguish them from the genotypes. Next, we need the offspring genotypes. So we've got capital F, capital F, capital F and a lowercase. Or dominant and recessive, and then recessive. Then we need to match it up to the phenotypes. So this I'm going to say N cystic fibrosis. They don't have cystic fibrosis. They don't have cystic fibrosis. They don't have cystic fibrosis. I'm going to highlight this one because that's the only one where we've got homozygous recessive. So that means they have cystic, or that genotype would give the phenotype, cystic fibrosis. And then that means we've got 25% probability. However, there's also 50% probability of having a biological daughter versus biological son. So that means we need to do 50% of 25, or in other words, half of that. So we're going to do half. So we actually have 12.5%. And that is my final answer. Now, if you do have the active recall workbook, there is actually the answers workbook, so you could check that against that book. Let's have a go at another one then. So we're told that cows can be red, white, or roan in colour. Red and white are both dominant, so that means this is an example of co-dominance. And we're told if 2 roan cows reproduce, what is the probability they'll produce red offspring? So again, we always need to include all of this information: parents' genotypes, gametes, offspring, genotypes, offspring phenotypes, and the probability. So we need to start with the parents' genotypes, and it's 2 roan cows. This is codominance, which means you have to have a base letter to represent the gene. So I'm going to go for C as my base letter for colour to represent the gene, and then red and white and roan. So if red and white are both dominants, that means it'd be capital R, capital W, and roan must be the codominant phenotype because we have only got those 2 alleles. So if you've got 2 roan cows, that means they must both be CR, CW, CR, CW. There we go. So that's our parents' genotypes. Next then is saying what the gametes would be. So it'd have 1 of the dominant red, 1 of the dominant white for both parents. Okay, so that's our gametes. Now we need to do the offspring genotype. So combining these, we've got CR, 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 CW, CW, CW. So then we need to put in the phenotypes. So 2 R's would be red, R, and so red and white would be a roan. This would be roan, and this would be white. So we have got a 1 to 2 to 1 ratio of red, roan, white. But let's just have a look what the question was. What is the probability they'll produce red offspring? So the final answer then is 25%, because 1 out of 4 would be roan. So that's the sort of thing that I do for active recall stage before you then go on to an exam question. So this is a step up from just flashcards, because you are doing some short answer questions, which is why I love using the 2 together. Flashcards are great for remember key marking points, key terms. Then you go on to the active recall workbook, and there's lots of questions to test your understanding, improve your long-term memory, and it comes with all the answers. And then you can go on to exam questions after that. So that is our remembering stage ticked off. And remember, if you do want to try using my flashcards or my active recall workbook, then they are linked below. And trust me, students absolutely love them and have found them incredibly useful and valuable at motivating them and improving their grade. So the final step, which is so important, is exam practice. But it's important you don't do this step too soon, because you'll just waste your time. If you do exam questions before you understand the information or remember it, then you're not going to get very good marks on these questions, which is going to be really demoralizing and a waste of your time. So make sure you don't jump into this step too soon. Now, for the exam questions, what I'd recommend is you head over to my freebies page, go to either my end of unit topic 7 test, which are my new tests for 2024, and have a go at the topic 7, just doing the ones which are linked to inheritance. Or your other option is head to my freebies page, have a go at the assessment bundle and pick out the topic 7 pack, and again, just do the topic topic 7 questions. So that's what I'd suggest you now have a go at doing by yourself. Go and download one or both of those booklets. It's free, it's linked below, and have a go at answering those exam questions. And you can do this as a mixture of with your notes to start with, without your notes after that, and then in timed conditions as well, making sure that you really understand how to mark it accurately. And that leads me on to, if you haven't already seen this video that I've got here on understanding the mark scheme so that you can mark your work accurately, definitely check out this video after this one now. But for now, that is the end of our revision session together. I hope you found it really helpful and helping you to make sure you're staying focused and not getting distracted. And if you have made it this far, then let me know in the comments which topic do you want me to do a revise with me next, so I can tailor it to what you want me to do with you as your study buddy. But that's it for this week. Have a good week, everyone, and I'll see you next Sunday.